Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay, it's time. What the heck? Jeez, look at all this stuff. All right, let's do it. Or original link to the video, top of the description below. Right below that, link to the Discord. Click on it. Send you right over there. I'd love to have you. I wasn't making eye contact. Sorry. How are you? Jeez, that's weird. Okay. Emperor Hadrian, facial reconstruction and history revealed with Antinous. Wait, what? Antinous?
And welcome back to Royalty Now. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Royalty Now, where we recreate famous figures from the past and talk about their history. Today's subject is Emperor Hadrian, one of the most gifted men that Rome ever produced. And although he was the third of Rome's, quote, 5 good emperors, he was the first emperor who really moved beyond the stereotype of good and bad. His reign had
Trajan, Marcus Aurelius? Who are the 5 good ones?
Emperor who really moved beyond the stereotype of good and bad. His reign had a shaky beginning, a glorious middle, and a tragic conclusion. We also have a bonus recreation of his deified lover, Antinous. So let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, now I know. Sorry, guys, I'm talking about something in Discord. Julius. My God, Caesar kind of looks like Putin. Or not really, actually. I feel like they're being very generous.
Publius Aelius Hadrianus was born on the 24th of January 76 AD in Italica, which is the first Roman settlement in present-day Spain and the first Roman city outside of Italy. Hadrian's mother, Domitia Paulina of Gades, was a wealthy noblewoman from one of the wealthiest cities in the empire. His father, Publius Aelius Hadrianus Afer, was a wealthy and distinguished Roman soldier and senator who had been born and raised in Italica, but whose family was well established in Italy. In fact, the future emperor of Rome, Trajan, was actually Hadrian's father's cousin, so they were a very well-connected family. In circumstances that aren't very clear, both of Hadrian's parents died in 86 AD. That left the entirety of the family's inheritance falling on a 10-year-old boy. This event would ultimately steer the direction of Hadrian's life. Since he was so young when his parents died, he had to become a ward, and he became the ward of Basilius Antinous and the future Emperor Trajan. He would be tutored extensively in various subjects, but he was really fond of learning about Greek literature and learning the Greek language, so much so that they gave him the nickname Little Greek. And this fondness for Greek culture would steer his entire emperorship later on. During the 90s AD, as Trajan was beginning to gain real power in Rome, he called on Hadrian to the city to begin his career, a move that showed his blatant favor towards Hadrian. He would become a military tribune under Emperor Nerva and was selected to inform Trajan that he had been adopted as Nerva's successor. In 98 AD, when Emperor Nerva died, Hadrian personally rode out before the official convoy to warn Trajan, just in case there would be any trouble with the succession. Before Trajan, no emperor had ever been born outside of Italy. This act would gain Hadrian further favor from Trajan, and it was
that's a cool fact. I didn't know that. First to be born outside of...
This act would gain Hadrian further favor from Trajan, and it was from then on that he became Trajan's favorite for an heir. By 101, Hadrian was rising in power. He was elected as a liaison between Trajan and the Senate, reading the emperor's speeches, which he most likely wrote himself, and he would go on to be known as an incredible public speaker. Hadrian was doing everything right. But that same year, Hadrian was arranged to marry Vibia Sabina, something that he himself was incredibly unenthusiastic about.
Wonder why?
The marriage was most likely arranged by Trajan's wife Plotina, who was an incredibly intelligent, influential woman, and she'd always been really fond of Hadrian. If Hadrian did indeed become Trajan's successor, which she believed, her family would be able to keep its social and political influence. Now, looking back, if Hadrian had known how important this would end up being,
it's so fascinating the power dynamic between, or obviously men, being able to do a lot of things that women can't back in these ancient times, and that it's that women have to, that like smart, ambitious women or smart ambitious men have one way of going about getting power, and then smart ambitious women have to do it more like puppet mastery rather than like being the puppet, like having your son, like, isn't that happen with Nero, or like having your son do it, or like stuff like she just said right there. I think it's fascinating.
Life, he might have had a better outlook on the marriage from the very beginning. Unfortunately, Hadrian was in no real way loving to his wife. Something that can be understood when we begin to find out more about Hadrian's sexuality as his life progresses. The rumors of Hadrian's coldness and their failure to produce a child begin other rumors about Hadrian. Whatever it was, his marriage and treatment of Vibia lined up perfectly with the souring of Trajan's favor of Hadrian. And although early on it was clear to most that Hadrian was favored to be Trajan's successor, years would pass, and assurance would turn to ambiguity. Begin be understood when we begin to find out more about Hadrian's sexuality as his life progresses. The rumors of Hadrian's coldness and their failure to produce a child begin other rumors about Hadrian. Whatever it was, his marriage and treatment of Vibia lined up perfectly with the souring of Trajan's favor of Hadrian. And although early on it was clear to most that Hadrian was favored to be Trajan's successor,
I don't get it. I don't get it.
And treatment of begin other rumors about Hadrian. Whatever it was, his marriage and treatment of Vibia lined up
I know this might be frustrating, guys. If you're new, I want to make it smooth, whatever video, enjoyable for you, but if I don't learn, then what is the point of reacting to videos? The rumors of Hadrian's coldness. So him being not interested in the woman that Trajan's wife set him up with.
Was in no real way loving to his wife. Something that can be understood when we begin to find out more about Hadrian's sexuality as his life progresses. The rumors of Hadrian's coldness and their failure to produce a child begin other rumors about Hadrian. Whatever it was, his marriage and treatment of Vibia lined up perfectly with the souring of Trajan's favor of Hadrian. And although early on it was clear to most that Hadrian was favored to be Trajan's successor, years would pass.
Okay, so I think I get it. So the rumors of him, I guess, being gay, or him, you know, not treating his wife well, who was connected in a way to Trajan because Trajan's wife set him up, was causing some issues. And then that also with Trajan not liking him for something else, and it just made a perfect storm.
Would turn to ambiguity. Strangely, nothing is really known about the next 10 years of his life, except that he became Archon of Athens and was even elected to become an Athenian citizen, something that would have made his younger self incredibly proud. Trajan, through his military campaigns and incredible skill at disarming his enemies, would go on to become arguably Rome's greatest emperor, expanding Rome to its greatest size. But in 117 AD...
He sort of reminds me of the... Who was the Russian emperor before Catherine? Who was like a huge Prussia fanboy. And maybe I'm wrong.
Rome to its greatest size. But in 117 AD, Trajan would suddenly fall ill during a campaign. On his way back to Italy, lying on his deathbed, it was clear that it was finally time for him to name an heir. So Trajan was presented with the papers to officially adopt Hadrian. But when the official adoption document was eventually presented, the Senate was shocked to see that it was not signed by Trajan, but his wife Plotina instead, who had her own stake in the matter. This led some to believe that she was the ultimate mastermind behind the succession. No matter who was truly named, it may have been Hadrian all along, but the issue of the papers has never been truly resolved. And some historians say that Plotina is the only reason for Hadrian's succession. Either way, Hadrian did not allow for the adoption papers to carry much weight. He very quickly secured the support of the army, and along after that came the Senate's endorsement. And although there were still some loose strings, Hadrian is now the emperor of Rome at its absolute zenith. But he wasn't in Rome to celebrate. Instead, he remained in Syria, and he was suppressing revolts that had broken out under Trajan's rule.
I'm going back again. Fast forward if you want. That's interesting. I have questions there. So Trajan was on his deathbed. He got the paper sent over to adopt Hadrian, who would become the successor.
Trajan.
But the paper didn't have... So was it presented, was the signed paper by Plotina given to the Senate after Trajan died? Because that's curious. Because, like, what if she... I'm just theory crafting here, right? Theorizing nonsense maybe, but what if she was there on his deathbed and he's super weak and he was gonna not sign something or name someone else that she didn't like, and then, like, she just, like, snuffed him out and then, like, signed it or something? I'm just thinking of strange, weird stuff, but I'm again...
The document was eventually presented. The Senate was shocked to see that it was not signed by Trajan, but his wife Plotina instead, who had her own stake in the matter.
So she signed in Hadrian.
This led some to believe that she was the ultimate mastermind behind the succession. No matter who was truly named, it may have been Hadrian all along, but the issue of the papers has never been truly resolved. And some historians say that Plotina is the only reason for Hadrian's succession. Either way...
So what's the mystery? I don't get it. Like, whether it was all a plot by Plotina?
Hadrian did not allow for the adoption papers to carry much weight. He very quickly secured the support of the army.
And I don't get that. He didn't have the document signature or the carry much weight, but I thought the document ensured that he would be the heir. So why would he, if he was already being named the heir by Plotina, then why is he so nervous and getting ready to get the army support?
And along after that came the Senate's endorsement. And although there were still some loose strings, Hadrian is now the emperor of Rome at its absolute zenith. But he wasn't in Rome to celebrate. Instead, he remained in Syria, and he was suppressing revolts that had broken out under Trajan's rule of military expansionism, and he would remain in the East for some time. During this time, Hadrian's matters in Rome were trusted to his longtime guardian.
Guys, question, when is the first part of the Bible written? Not the Torah, the New Testament? Because I know, wasn't it first written like a few decades after Jesus actually died? And so that makes me think, like, what's going on right now with Christianity, which is going to be... I almost want to read the Bible. I've never read the Bible, but I sort of want to read it. I'm not a religious person at all. Like, I don't think it's a good or bad thing. I think people should believe what they want to believe. You know, be religious if you want to. But I would love to read the Bible just like as a book, like as like a mythology, like I would read, and part history, because I'm sure it's obviously all the miracle stuff. But some of it, I'm sure, is writing down of. And anyways, I think I should, just because it's such an important book for Western civilization, that I would also like to read the Quran too. Yeah, I just think it'd be cool just to read those books, like chapter by chapter. Just to see what it's like, I guess. So yeah, I just wonder, like, what's going on with Christianity right now? It's a few decades after Jesus died, like 60 years after or something. And
Hadrian's matters in Rome were trusted to his longtime guardian, Acilius Attianus. Attianus soon reported that he had discovered a plot against Hadrian's life. Acting swiftly, 4 leading senators had been hunted down and killed without a trial. The men included longtime rivals of Hadrian and the only other men who had a claim as Trajan's successor. When Hadrian finally did make it back to Rome, he was welcomed by the people with open arms, but the Senate was furious. Hadrian claimed no fault in the matter, stating that Antinous had acted on his own. Hadrian would retire his longtime guardian from public life, and although his relationship with the Senate would never be repaired, his legitimacy was no longer questioned. One of the first things that Hadrian did was to realize that the empire was being stretched far too thin. In direct opposition to everything Trajan stood for, and possibly out of spite, he would abandon Trajan's conquest and instead form a policy of peace through strength. He shifted his focus to art and architecture, he rebuilt the Pantheon to what we know today, and he began construction on his own giant villa, which would be styled exclusively in the Greek and Egyptian styles.
Versailles.
After 3 years in Rome, Hadrian decided that he wanted to see the empire through his own eyes, and he would end up spending more than half his reign outside of Italy. His first stop was the farthest west he could go, Britannia.
Build the wall.
Rome had been fighting a war with the Caledonians in Britannia for over 100 years. Hadrian decided that he would end the conflict once and for all. He ordered the construction of a wall, spanning near the border of what is now England and Scotland.
I love how the Romans seem to like stop at, the Hadrian Wall part and like stop at the Rhine River and just be like, even for the Romans, like those guys are too insane, okay? Excuse me, burp.
It was made 73 miles wide and 12 feet tall in order to separate Romans from barbarians.
Oh, wait, what?
Spanning near the border of what is now England and Scotland, it was made 73 miles wide and 12 feet tall in order to separate Romans from barbarians.
So these are only the very, very, very base stones? So, because I always wondered, and I've seen pictures of Hadrian's Wall like this, and I'm like, okay, so it seemed that's not going to stop a marching army or something, right? It might be somewhat of a obstacle if like your army is right here and they got to go over it or something. But I thought it was just like all right, this is our territory, this is not our territory sort of deal. But it was actually much bigger and actually did intend to keep people from
for good. It was the first time that an emperor had defined what was and was not Rome. And Hadrian's Wall still stands to this day. Over the next couple of years, Hadrian would travel all over the empire, not for war, but for peace. He would settle minor disputes, he negotiated peace with local leaders, he would fund building projects in places that had been ravaged by war or natural disaster, and he supported the idea of communities ruling with their own customs and laws, rather than just imposing Roman ones. This would create the feeling in the empire that Hadrian was a protector of Rome, all of Rome. Aelius Aristides, a highly respected...
And I think that's just smart, because if you try and, the more land you conquer and try to impose, like, your lifestyle and your customs and rules over the entire thing, is going to make a lot of people want to revolt against you, and instead just kind of having the territory but allow people to feel like they're kind of self-ruling in a way, I think would be much better.
All of Rome. Aelius Aristides, a highly respected Greek orator, would later write that Hadrian extended over his subjects a protecting hand, raising them as one helps fallen men on their feet. In late 123, while visiting what is now Turkey, Hadrian would meet a young man named Antinous, and both of their lives would change.
You know who I'm talking to. You know who you are.
Forever. According to Lambert, the usually focused Hadrian felt an immediate kinship to the young Antinous. Nothing is really known about them this early, except that Antinous was quickly recruited by Hadrian to become a page, and he was sent to Rome for training soon after. Hadrian would not see Antinous for 2 years after this, traveling through Athens and Greece. After 3 years away, Hadrian would finally arrive back in Rome. The following 3 years would be spent mostly at his villa in Tivoli. during this time, Antinous would become Hadrian's personal favorite. And soon after, a romantic relationship would start between the two. According to Lambert, Hadrian believed Antinous to be intelligent and wise beyond his years, and also describes Antinous as the one person to have connected most profoundly with Hadrian.
Oh god, how old is he? Okay.
And also describes Antinous as the one person to have connected most profoundly with Hadrian, something that no one before had been able to do. By 128, Hadrian would leave Rome once again.
I was gonna make a... I'm a child. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm growing as a person.
Able to do. By 128, Hadrian would leave Rome once again.
They connected,
this time
all right.
he'd have Antinous by his side.
Ah, I'm sorry. It is a beautiful story. Sorry. Okay.
One before had been able to do. By 128, Hadrian would leave Rome once again, only this time he'd have Antinous by his side. He would not return for 7 years. The trip was almost certainly a way for Hadrian to show the empire off to Antinous. They would visit Hadrian's beloved Athens twice, spending a year there alone. They would travel through Asia, see Jerusalem, and arrive in Egypt. Once in Egypt, they visited Alexander the Great's tomb, and they were known to have all-night parties. This may have been the happiest that Hadrian had ever been. Finally himself, with a man that he loved. On October 22nd, 130, Hadrian, Antinous, and their party were participating in the Festival of the Nile in Egypt. Tragically, shortly after the party, Antinous' body was found floating in the river. In Hadrian's own account, he says that Antinous fell in and drowned. Little is known about what happened or what caused his death. There's many theories about what this could have been, including murder. And unfortunately, we're never likely to know. But what is known is that Emperor Hadrian was earth-shatteringly devastated by the news. Author Royson Lambert says, "The way that Hadrian took the boy on his travels, he kept him close to him at moments of spiritual, moral, or physical exaltation, and after his death, surrounded himself with his images, showing an obsessive craving for his presence, a mystical, religious need for his companionship."
Wait, so where was Hadrian when this happened? Because, I mean, he's probably suspect number one, right? Main suspect? Maybe they got in some, like, jealous rage or something like that? I don't know. I'm just speculating. I mean...
Author Royson Lambert says, "There's many theories. Little is known. In Hadrian's own account, he says that Antinous fell in and drowned.
Fell in. I don't know. I'm not trying to solve a 2,000-year-old murder case here, but if I were a detective, I would be questioning Hadrian first.
Little is known about what happened or what caused his death. There's many theories about what this could have been, including murder. And unfortunately, we're never likely to know.
Just because, you know, he was said to be, you know, completely heartbroken and everything, I mean, that could be regret for what he did. Look, he lived 2,000 years ago, okay? I think I'm okay with speculating if maybe he murdered him, but I'm not saying he did. I'm just curious.
Moments of spiritual, moral, or physical exaltation, and after his death, surrounded himself with his images, showing an obsessive craving for his presence, a mystical, religious need for his companionship. The grieving Hadrian had Antinous deified immediately and ordered a city be built on the bank of the Nile near where he drowned, in his honor. A cult grew quickly around Hadrian's lover and spread throughout the provinces, and it's actually estimated that there were once over 2,000 statues of Antinous, with his worship rising in popularity over the next 200 years. At one point, the worship of Antinous even rivaled the then new religion of Christianity.
Well, sure.
Hadrian...
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Hadrian's grief would change him...
I mean, Christianity was very young at the time, so...
completely, and I don't believe...
Sorry, I gotta shut up.
Hadrian's grief would change him completely, and I don't believe he ever recovered from Antinous' death fully. In 132, a Jewish revolt started that led to heavy Roman losses. And while he was previously known for his policies of peace, Hadrian did not negotiate, and he did not speak for peace. He ordered a full-out war on Jerusalem.
Uh-oh. Here's the... Is this the evil arc?
By the time the rebellion was put down 3 years later, 580,000 Jews had been killed, along with 50 towns destroyed and almost 1,000 villages being burned to the ground. Hadrian would spend his final bitter years in Rome.
After all the persecution of Judaism over 2,000 years, it is mind-boggling how Judaism is still around. That, if anything, that is just impressive.
His unhappy marriage to Sabina left no children, and with that, no heir. Not wanting to repeat Trajan's failure to name an heir, Hadrian would go on to name 3. Antoninus Pius was chosen to become emperor, but only under the condition that he adopt 2 young men to become his successor, Lucius Verus and...
I always confuse with this stuff, because I mean... When you're an emperor, like, if you want to be an emperor, like, and you become emperor, it's like, you're not, like, emperor number 2 of Hadrian before you, or X before you, right? And so, if I were to become emperor, and I accepted, okay, I'll adopt these people as my successor, okay? When he died, I would be like, I'm emperor just like you were emperor. I'm picking my own damn successor, you know what I mean? So I wonder how often it was actually like, yeah, I'll name my successors before you die if you give me the emperorship, and then actually went through with them. Maybe people have more honor than I do, I guess. But I wonder if Hadrian would have named Antinous as his successor.
And Marcus Aurelius.
If he had survived.
Both of the boys...
Ooh, Marcus Aurelius.
Lucius Verus and Marcus Aurelius.
Obviously he does.
Both of the boys would go on to rule the empire together. Marcus would then go on to be the last of the 5 good emperors, and one of the best emperors that Rome had ever seen. Emperor Hadrian died on July 10th, 138, surrounded by statues and images of his one true love, Antinous. So let's go ahead and talk about Hadrian's appearance and a bit about his lover Antinous' appearance as well.
See it.
Both of these men have very famous faces, meaning there were dozens of statues of Hadrian and hundreds, if not thousands, created of Antinous. Remarkably, each man looks really consistent throughout his own not thousands created of Antinous.
Antinous looks almost too perfect of a face to be real, you know? Maybe he was just a really beautiful man. But he almost looks like what you would draw like a like god to be back then. I feel like if you're like or something like that, be like, oh, a god. It'd be like, oh, that the picture you drew. And I wonder if, I mean, maybe he was a really attractive dude, and that's just what he looks like. He looks like Hadrian looks
dozens of statues,
and the other ones look more like. They seem to have certain imperfections, and they look a certain way. It's like, huh, I can see someone looking like that.
Hadrian.
And then this looks like you would draw like an image of Cupid. You know what I mean? Of just like, oh yeah, it's just a perfect man's face.
Man looks really consistent throughout his own lifetime.
And I wonder if Hadrian had him sculpted to be more. I don't know.
It's really easy to tell what Hadrian looked like. Each statue looks just like him. There are, of course, some stylizations to be aware of, as with all Roman and Greek statues.
Like Russell Crowe.
As we mentioned in history, Hadrian had a massive fondness for Greek culture, and he kind of ordered these artistic portrayals of him to include a full head of curly hair and a full curly beard, and these were kind of meant to evoke the energy of the great Greek philosophers he admired so much. In the case of Antinous, although he was surely a really good-looking person during his life, the Greek idealism can be seen on many of his statues. They're almost too perfect.
Exactly. It's just like it's too good.
Idealism can be seen on many of his statues. They're almost too perfect. In the case of both men, we don't have too much to go on.
Like that looks like a real person. that doesn't look like a real person.
Of hair or eye color.
And I think about it, if I were, think about if you were like, had this one, like you're this big emperor and you want to leave your mark in statue form, right? It's not like there's photos and stuff like that. And I think they sometimes do this with, like, would you want them to make you look more beautiful than you are, to make it seem like you are? Or I feel like I would want it to be more accurate than be me in a more, my idea of a more perfect looking me, right? I would rather it be just as accurate as possible, just so that, like, that looks like a real person and like that actual face would be seen, you know?
Pigmentary analysis of some sculptures of Hadrian give him dark hair and gray eyes, but we don't have much for Antinous. One source described his hair as kind of almost purple. I'm guessing that meant something that was either very, very black or maybe dark with a bit of red. So I did have to use a bit of artistic interpretation in these images. But let's go ahead and take a look at the recreations now.
It seems like they got his mouth a little bit wrong. Like his mouth, lower jaw area seems to be a bit more kind of like rather. Yeah, I mean, I'm and his nose, does it have like a deviated? It's hard to tell because of how I wish he was kind of looking a little bit that way, just so I could, just like he is there. It's kind of throwing me off. Pretty cool.
Thank you all so much for watching.
Thank
Please
you.
drop your suggestions for future subjects in the comments below. It was such a pleasure talking history with you today, and we'll see you for the next video.
Great video. Really cool video. All right, I'll do a few other those. I think there are some other recreations. I can do those, depending on how you guys like it. I thought it was fun, so maybe I'll do them anyway. Screw you guys. Hope you're all doing well. Love you guys. Hope you learned something or can teach me something down in the comments. I hope you can join the Discord if that's your thing. And I will see you guys next video. Bye, guys.